So it gives us a different look at what we can see. And then the X-ray is way up here. That's what the Chandra gives us. And it turns out different objects, different materials, and different things that are going on in space gives out radiation in different areas of the spectrum. All right? As a matter of fact, I thought about introducing this by saying, welcome, fellow radiators. But I thought I might be dragged out of here before I have a chance to explain myself. But you all are radiators of electromagnetic radiation in the infrared region because of your body temperature. And that is used for certain things. If you've ever seen military pictures of people in a greenish background running around, that's infrared. They can pick up people in the infrared, but you can't see it with your eyes. Okay? Now, why do we need space telescopes? The next slide helps a little bit with that, because here again we have the long radio waves going up to X-ray and gamma ray. Here's the visible light. Here's the infrared. Now, these waves are trying to give an indication of what kind of radiation makes it through our atmosphere. And you notice way down in the long end of the wavelengths and the radio waves below our broadcast radio, that signal doesn't make it through our atmosphere very well. Radio waves, what we think of as radio waves, make it through reasonably well through the atmosphere, and that's shown here. We pick that up with this kind of a radio telescope. Infrared can make it reasonably well to some mountaintops. That was mentioned earlier, but even those are degraded, and you notice it's not making it down to the standard level telescopes. So for infrared, we really need a telescope beyond the atmosphere to make it effective. Okay? Then we get into ultraviolet, or this visible light here, and it makes it through for the most part. Okay? It is also filtered a little bit, but it makes it through. Then the ultraviolet. Fortunately for us, as living organisms, a great deal of the ultraviolet light is screened out by the ozone layer. Otherwise, we'd have a pretty hard time with it. Okay? So again, ultraviolet, we have to be above the atmosphere to get that very well. And of course, X-ray also doesn't make it down the Earth very well. And so we have those telescopes, especially the three that we're talking about. There are other telescopes at the other wavelengths, monitoring gamma ray, and then we have radio telescopes and so on. But for us today, we're interested in infrared and X-ray essentially. Okay, the galactic center region. This is what we see at in the Hubble, near infrared. Now, where is the center of the galaxy? If I hadn't told you, there are some contenders there. So at just below the visible light level, you could make out the center, but there are some other competitors for that distinction apparent on the photograph. Okay? Now, the reason we don't use visible is, I don't know if I mentioned this, but there's a lot of dust and gas that blocks the visible light, but infrared can make it through. And so at the near infrared, we see this. Then we go on to the Spitzer, and we get a little different version of the infrared here. We see different things. And people knowledgeable about interpreting this can get a lot of detailed information about what they're seeing with this. And then finally, in the X-ray area, we have Chandra. Okay? And notice, again, it's a different picture. Those have been combined. Now, the Chandra is blue because X-rays are blue. And of course, before the Spitzer was red because infrared is red. And before that, Hubble was some other color. That's not true. X-ray is not blue, and infrared is not red. Infrared means below the red. It doesn't have a color as we would describe it. Okay? So these are false color images. And the dirty little secret is virtually all astrophotographs are false color, except for the moon. That you can pretty much use the actual color. But by false color, even when we image something in visible light, like the great pictures of Jupiter you saw, they're actually the true colors, except that if you look through a telescope, they wouldn't be that striking. You use a time exposure and let the light build up and be collected to get the spectacular telescopes. If you were looking in real time through a telescope, most objects would not be as striking as the photographs that you see. So even the visible light photographs are kind of false color. The X-ray, infrared, and those, they make them a visible color so that we can see what's being imaged from those, all right? And for the purpose of having different colors that we can put into a composite, they just put the X-ray images into a bluish color, our personal bluish color. The infrared were a reddish color, and Hubble fell whatever color that was, okay? And you've seen pictures of the Hubble. There's one picture of it, the Spitzer and the Chandra, and there's all kinds of details here, but we won't worry about that. I don't have really much to say about this, except I found it interesting. It's the center of the galaxy. Right here we have our 4 million solar mass black hole. The black hole at the center of our universe is believed to be about 4 million times the mass of our sun. Okay? The picture of the black hole comes later. But this is the surrounding area. Black hole, by the way, you can't see. Nobody has ever seen a black hole, but you can see with the proper instruments the effects that a black hole has on the material around it. Okay? And this next, this is Sagittarius A. That black hole was first discovered, as I understand it, in the radio wavelengths, and then later on it was determined to be a black hole. So that there's something going on there, not because we can actually see the black hole. Now, an interesting thing, we're told that about 50 years ago, this galactic center region was about 100,000 times brighter than it is right now. Well, first of all, I find that hard to grasp. If they say so, I'll accept it. How do we know that? We didn't have telescopes 50 years ago that could tell us that. What was pointed out was that we can see reflections of what happened 50 years ago that went out and bounced off clouds of gas and so on. And now we are seeing reflections of what happened 50 years before the rest of the picture. And they are much brighter than what we see right now for the center of the galaxy, or the effects of that black hole. Okay? This is an artist's impression here. It is believed that at that time, the black hole swallowed something with about the mass of our planet Mercury at that time, causing a big burst of emissions for a much brighter emission around that. Okay? And finally there, my slide 19, my personal favorite picture of a black hole at all radiation wavelengths. Everyone should have their own copy, and I'd be happy to provide you with mine if you provide your email address or whatever. Okay. Anyone have any quick questions, because we have